Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Joseph Farley Show. My name is Justin Allen Case, and today's show will be with Lyn Ulbricht, the mother of Ross Ulbricht, who has been convicted and sentenced to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole in federal prison for operating a website called Silk Road. Mrs. Ulbricht and many others feel that the conviction was an error, mainly because Ross really did nothing wrong, because the sentence was extreme and vastly excessive, and because the court violated his rights throughout the trial. And the possibility exists that the court did not have jurisdiction in the matter. Ross is a very likable young man and was a scholarship student who graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Physics and then earned his master's degree at Penn State in Material Science. While at Penn State, he got involved in the Ron Paul campaign and libertarian thinking, the philosophy of economics, and the free market concepts. Ross created a video game having to do with economics, but was unable to get it published, so he created Silk Road website, one of the purposes of which was to market his game, and another was to protect the anonymity and identity of its users. Silk Road was intended to function very much like Amazon.com, where various vendors would offer their products for sale. The big difference was that, one, a small part of the things offered for sale on the website were illegal, and two, he accepted payments only in cryptocurrency. So to get started in this saga, here's our host, Joseph Farley.
Well, thank you very much, Justin. You know, this case is going to be very interesting to review. And let me tell you why. You know, you had indicated it's going to be similar to that he wanted to set this up, the Silk Road, very similar to Amazon.com. The only problem that Ross missed is that he didn't get a chance to charge the taxpayers $1.46. I'm not sure if you've heard about that, Justin, but old Jeff Bezos has convinced lawmakers to pay him $1.46 for every package that goes out at Amazon. What do you think of that?
I didn't know about it.
Yeah. Well, it's gaining a lot of traction here. You know, the thing that interests me about Ross's particular case is that is the band of criminals that are actually involved in this particular case, and a portion of those criminals would be old Chucky Schumer out of New York. And I don't know if you've seen. There's a lot of information in this case, and we haven't had a chance to go through all of it yet. But the information that I've seen in this case is going to be very exciting to expose and bring out to the guys in the cryptocurrency space. Because what they've done to this young man, I don't think they're going to get away with personally. Now, why would you give a kid a double life sentence without the possibility of parole? Any thoughts on that, Justin?
Well, yeah. I think a good part of that was because of the cryptocurrency. They're trying to put a big rein on cryptocurrency so that it has to be regulated. And right now, there are very little regulations that apply to it. So I think he stepped out there and, in doing so, stepped on a lot of people's toes. On top of that, I think he got people really upset with him. Chucky Schumer won because they just built this case so out of proportion, it's ridiculous. There are federal sentencing guidelines that apply to every conviction of a criminal nature in the courts. And this just shoots those guidelines right in the foot. I mean, it doesn't comply to any of them.
We've yet to see what the actual crime is, right? I mean, all the information that we've looked at so far, we've yet to see a victim.
Yeah, we have seen a lot of accusations, but we haven't seen anybody come forth and say that they were hurt, that they were injured, that they had a loss. We haven't seen anybody come forth and say, yes, all this happened on federal property. Now, the federal government, I'm sure, is going to state, well, it doesn't have to be on federal property because of the Interstate Commerce Clause. the 42nd Federalist paper deals with, among other things, the Interstate Commerce Clause. And what the Constitution was trying to do with that clause was make sure that the persons of one state who wanted to ship their product or crops through another state to get to a port of debarkation didn't have to pay the other state or states taxes to get their product through that state to the port.
Okay, Justin, let's back up for just a moment because you used a very important word there, and that was persons. Now, when the code is defined, usually they'll have a definition for persons.
Yes, and I misspoke there. Thank you for calling it to my attention. Well,
you're welcome, and you better not do it again, doggone it.
There you go. What I meant to refer to was men, as in mankind, both genders. When a man wants to send his products or crops, whatever, through another state, that state cannot tax him for doing that. That's the whole purpose of the Interstate Commerce Clause. And what the federal government has done is said, well, if you have a business in one state and any part of that business could possibly touch any other state, then we can control it all. And that's not what the intent of the Constitution framers had.
But the part that I think is really interesting in this is that the different agencies are all coming together to try to get their little fingers in the crypto pie. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. And each state, well, I won't say each state, some of the states are doing that on their own.
You know, that's a very good point. And Justin, we should. Actually, if you'll leave comments in the section below, if you have an interest in knowing which states' laws are the best for cryptocurrencies, let us know, because we have an interest in going through and looking at the different states. And Justin, I believe that you looked at New York.
They probably all will be similar to each other. One of the terms that I found in the New York State, and I haven't gone through the whole thing yet, but is a phrase, quote, in this state, unquote. And that leads you to believe that they're talking about the state of New York, and that's not true. In this state is
their particular licensing regulations. And I believe that there are some other states that are going to read very similar to New York's regulations. Matter of fact, I kind of hate to give up the secret before we cover it, but all the states act like that. All of them have put that in there in this state to violate your rights. That's one of the tricks that the globalists have put in all the different states' licensing rules.
Yes. They use that term, I think, primarily when they want the legislation that they're passing to violate your rights.
Right. So this is a way that they've set this up to circumvent their constitutional box that the administrators have to stay in. Is that what you're saying?
In Texas, where we are domiciled and where we live, they have created legislation which ostensibly allows them to tax property. Now, the federal government's Supreme Court has ruled on a number of occasions that no state can tax anything, any right that is protected by the federal Constitution. And men have a right to property that is protected by the federal Constitution. So what the state of Texas has done, and many other states, maybe all the other states, but for sure the state of Texas has created their legislation to say that they can tax property in this state. Anybody reading that would think, well, we're talking about in the state of Texas. Okay, so we're dead. We can't, nothing we can do. Well, you're not dead. They can't tax it in in Texas, so they tax it in this state.
Right. So the case that we have that we've read several times before, Butchers Union case, where it says that we have the right to preach the gospel, to till the soil, to practice law. That's a case that the Supreme Court has ruled on. And the way that the deep state has gotten around that is that they've injected this in this state in there. And, for years, we really couldn't figure out how they were doing this. Then we found out their little trick that all the professions they've tried to funnel into in this state.
Absolutely. There are very, very few occupations that can be licensed. Butchers Unit mentions not only the practice of law, but the practice of medicine, the tilling of the soil, and the preaching of the gospel. And it just uses those as examples. That would also include dentistry, chiropractic,
Plumbers,
carpenters, electricians, mechanics, all those things. Business licenses are only enforced because most businesses have incorporated. And when they incorporated, they became a fictitious entity and they can be controlled by the state.
right?
But if a man goes into business by himself, although they're going to try to make him get a license and they will threaten him if he doesn't.
Right. So it's the misinformation. It's the propaganda of the fake news media that continues to roll this out. The storyline of if you want to be an attorney, then you have to go to school and you have to get licensed, and same thing with a doctor and all this other garbage that they have invaded our minds with that we've believed. And now we're in this mess. But the great part about where we are and moving forward is that all of this is starting to get exposed as far as what the deep state has done, what the globalists have tried to do, and how America has really dodged a major bullet with our current administration. Had this thing gone the other way, this would be a horrible place to be. So,
I think you're too kind, Joseph.
oh, well, we don't want to offend, the certain aspect that, well, yeah, I guess we can, because there's that other certain aspect in our society. I really don't want to offend them and, point out that living in your mother's basement probably isn't a good idea and that they should actually go and get a job and make a living for themselves.
Are you saying that we don't want to call the legislatures and the governors of the various states that participate in this type of subterfuge are liars? We don't want to say that?
Well, liars is a hard term, but yeah, basically, yeah. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch how 2018 and 2019 unfold. And Ross's particular case, everybody that's surrounded by this guy's case, they have set their own trap. Ross's case reminds me of a story about the people that represent the deep state. And it involves a couple of other people. There's a king, a gatekeeper, wicked lying servants, and his wife, and then good people just trying to make a living and get by. So the gatekeeper, his name is Haddock. The wicked lying servant is Haman and his wife. And the good people that are just trying to make it in life and be left alone are Mordecai and Esther and their people. So what I've done is I've taken a couple of major points to convey to you today. Esther, chapter 3, verse 6. Yet having learned who Mordecai, talking about Haman, the wicked servant, yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all of Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. Esther chapter 3, verse 8. It says, Then Haman said to the king Xerxes, There is a certain people dispensed among the people in all the province of your kingdom, who keep themselves separate. Their customs are different from those of other people, and they do not obey the king's laws. It's not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. Yet Mordecai and the people did obey the king's law. It's that lying bat-rastard Haman that did not obey the law. Okay, back to the text. Esther chapter 4, verse 7. Mordecai told everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Now, he told the gatekeeper that because it was illegal for anyone to go inside the king's area in sackcloth and ashes. And this is the point. Mordecai had found a memo in today's time, and it greatly disturbed him. And so he went to Esther, one of his relatives, Esther 4, chapter 14. And he said this, and this is what you need to know as you listen to the rest of Ross's story. Mordecai said this, For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to royal position for such a time as this. Then in 5:7, Esther replies, My petition and my request is this. She went before the king. Then in Esther 7:9, it says, Then Harbana, one of the eunuchs attending the king, said, A pole reaching to a height of 50 cubits stands by Haman's house. He had it set up for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king. The king said, Impale him on it. Esther chapter 7, verse 10. So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. Then the king's fury subsided. Esther chapter 9, verse 11. The number of those killed in the citadel of Suez was reported to the king that same day. Esther chapter 9, verse 12. The king said to Queen Esther, The Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and 10 sons of Haman in the citadel of Suez. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? What is your petition? It will be given you. What is your request? It will be granted. Mordecai and Esther saved the Jews that day. Now, in the Bible, that represents freedom for God's people. And that's exactly what's going to happen here in America. And I believe that's exactly what's going to happen with Ross. So sit back and listen to the rest of the story. Okay, well, Justin, let's bring Lyn in and let's visit with her a little bit and find out more about Ross's case.
And his idea was to have a video game where people could experience through a video game what a free market really was, and have it be kind of like World of Warcraft or Second Life, which I, don't really, I've never played, but, where people all over the world could experience. And he actually almost got it published, but it didn't get published. And so he did it on the internet, and he set up a Silk Road, which was about really a site that would protect the privacy and anonymity of its users. So it used the little known cryptocurrency Bitcoin. I mean, hardly anyone had heard of it then. It was, worth very little. In fact, I asked him, should I get some? Because he was so excited about it. He goes, no, Mom, it's too volatile. And it was under $1. It was very bad. That was like the worst advice ever. But he had a lot. He had a lot of it. And he was very excited about it. And but anyway, the site was designed to be product agnostic in that it was up to users what they bought and sold, with restrictions, because it was based on a voluntarist philosophy of only things that were voluntary and did no harm. So, and this was very clearly stated in the site. And so that, for example, child pornography was prohibited, stolen property was prohibited, anything violent like assassinations or something like that was prohibited. But as a libertarian, the philosophy was that if you chose to use drugs, that was your personal choice. And so drugs obviously were not prohibited. And because of the anonymity of the site, I think that attracted a lot of people exchanging drugs. It was mostly marijuana for most of the time.
Let me jump in here for just a minute. If you remember, the way that they rolled out the internet was supposed to be completely anonymous.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. And you can keep your plan if you are satisfied with it. If you like the plan you have, you can keep it. If you like your plan and you like your doctor, you won't have to do a thing. You keep your plan. If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan.
And today we know, because of Snowden and because of other deals, other people, that everything that you do, every keystroke that you make, everything else, it's all recorded, right. It's all documented, it's all stored for a later point in time. And that point in time is prosecution. Whenever, or to blackmail you for something if you get out of rank and file. And America, that's not what we were sold.
No, that's not very American. Actually, yeah, that's one of the points in the in the petition to the Supreme Court that Ross and his team just filed recently, which is that all the government needs is your email address, and they can track you as if you had a collar on, like you were an animal. That's it. They can take it from an email address, which you can use anywhere in the world, to your home, to your devices. And as long as you use those devices, they can geographically track you.
Right.
This is, and this is a really important, without a warrant is the key word, sure. Without a warrant or probable cause. This is a Fourth Amendment affront. And, without protection from unreasonable searches and seizures, and without legal warrants, we really don't have a free life. We're being tracked. And it's coming out more and more how this has been abused by politicians, by the government. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Let me bring something up about this, because a lot of people that keep their head down, they go to work, they want to come home and relax, they go to bed, they raise a family, they get back up, and the whole routine starts again. And it's the rat on the wheels, so to speak, that the government wants to keep us running, so we don't have time to research things. But there's one of our senators here in Texas, John Cornyn, that has been a real advocate for the FISA court and the FISA rules to bring back in the spy grid, basically. And he's made on the Senate floor, he's made the declaration that we're not spying on Americans. Well, we're not spying on American citizens. And what he is saying may technically be true, but is fundamentally false. It is a complete lie. And one of the things in 50 USC 1885A, it talks about the language of person. Now, you and I think a person is just, I'm a person, you're a person, we're all people. That's not how that works. And the terminology for person is defined as this. The term person means A, an electronic communication service provider. That's what a person means. Or B, a landlord, custodian, or other person who may have authority or required to furnish assistance pursuant to, and it goes on and basically tells to turn everything over to the government. And the people in America have no clue that we're being spied on from start to finish. And because we haven't taken a stand, and any one of the people out here could be in the position that Ross is in right now.
Yeah, and a lot of almost 100% of the evidence was digital in this trial. There were no fingerprints, there were no witnesses that said Ross did anything. There is no DNA, which they already make mistakes with DNA anyway.
Sure.
And that's to me, a very troubling precedent, because it takes nothing to create or delete digital evidence or tamper with it. And in fact, tampering was discovered of the evidence after the trial, and it shows that someone went into the evidence and deleted a big portion of it. You know, and I've talked to forensic experts, and they say there is no way to tell if digital evidence has been tampered with at all. There's no way. There's no record of it, nothing. It's just gone and or planted. You can't tell what happened. When you think about caging people based on images on a screen that are anonymous, that can be so easily tampered with, and well, there's so many violations in Ross's trial, it would take hours to go over, but it just in a general application, I find it extremely troubling.
Right.
It's not even, it's not like governments all over throughout time haven't framed people and had show trials. But this makes it, all you need is a computer, and if you want to get fancy, Photoshop. That's it.
Well, yes. And
even a bank, even a mortgage company will not take a screenshot of a bank statement because they know how easily tampered with it is. You have to bring your bank statement in and show them the actual statement.
Right.
Because they don't trust it. And meanwhile, our courts, well, at the trial level, a precedent has been set here, well, actually now at the appellate level too, that it's okay to use digital evidence. And almost exclusively. Right. So I think that's a very scary thing. For the digital age.
This is not the America, and you've had a chance to see this firsthand, how the justice system works for the government, and what they have an interest in is a conviction. That's all they have an interest in. And I saw an article last month that spoke about Ross's Bitcoins would be at $1.9 billion right now. And these are Bitcoins that the government came in and stole from him with force, took away the Bitcoins, and then went out. That agency, and a lot of people don't realize that these are agencies, they are for-profit agencies. That agency took his Bitcoins, sold it, turned it into cash to fund whatever they wanted to do in their particular agency.
Let me just quickly interject that the reason it's worth so much is because Bitcoin has shot through the roof in value.
Right.
So, when Ross acquired Bitcoins, it was like I was telling you, it was under $1. Right. So now they're like, what? I haven't checked lately, $14,000, $15,000.
Yep.
So that's just to be clear, it wasn't that he had that much money
Right.
You know, it's just because it appreciated so much.
Sure.
But yeah, you know, I talked to somebody who said, you know, I was selling gold on Silk Road because most people don't realize Silk Road had lots of things for sale. It was like Amazon kind of. They had art and books and raw milk and all kinds of stuff, legal, that was not allowed to be mentioned at trial, by the way. The only thing that was allowed to be mentioned at trial to the jury was drugs. And it wasn't even allowed to be mentioned that most of the drugs was marijuana, small amounts.
Interesting things that a jury cannot do, and that is a jury can never unhear something. So once the prosecution floats that out there,
Yeah.
so now you know, and you've seen this firsthand, that the prosecution and the judge belong to the same organization and for the most part are on the same team, and the judge is the information regulator, that he shuts down a certain portion of information and won't let it in, and
Yes.
allow the other information.
Well, not only that, but this judge went back retroactively and flagged everywhere where the prosecution should have objected. They didn't, and should have, and then retroactively sustained it. And I have friends who've been to lots of trials. He goes, I've never seen anything like this.
Right. Right.
Judges are supposed to be impartial, and they're not supposed to help the prosecution
Right.
and hinder the defense.
Right. Well, the only way that
Scary stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
it is very scary, and the
Yeah.
only way that a judge can remain a judge, even someone appointed for life, is as long as that they are in good behavior. Not being in good behavior, they're supposed to be removed. And
Supposed to be are the key words there.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So just recently, we've seen this in a very high-profile case with the Bundys.
Yes.
That they just got released yesterday or day before, and
By a good judge.
yeah,
By
well,
a good ethical judge.
right.
Mhm.
So I think that we're seeing some things change in this country, but we've been through, and we're still beginning to digest this. Justin and I have been reading the transcripts, and it's appalling, the things that are in there. And
No, I know.
How can this happen this way?
And she struck a bunch of it from the record. I don't believe that's even in there.
Right.
The things that were, so yeah, no, I was, look, I was a very patriotic person. I believed, and I still do believe, that our country was founded on very lofty and ideals, and that it's being hijacked.
Sure.
And I was absolutely appalled. I thought, well, I wasn't a big fan of the government, but I was appalled at what I would see. And I'd bring it up to our lawyer, and he'd go, yeah, they do that. He is so jaded at this point, being a criminal defense attorney. He's like, yeah, they do that. I'm like, how can they do that? This is crazy. And he goes, yeah, they do. And they do whatever they want. And I think you and I mean, within limits, obviously, but you and I, for instance, she said she wanted to give Ross the worst possible penalty. Well, that's the death penalty. She can't do that.
Right.
She would have if she could have. She said she would. The death penalty, and there was no violence whatsoever. But in any case, as you and I discussed, everything the government does is essentially ultimately backed by force and violence. And it's just a matter of how far you want to take it. That's all. It is.
Right.
I mean, you can't argue with that.
Right.
And so that's why they do what they want. Prosecutors are being taken more to task, like in the Bundy case, because they have been running the justice system forever.
Right.
But yeah, people are becoming more aware. But as you pointed out earlier, many people aren't. And the thing is, look, people are trying to get through their day. They've got a heavy tax burden, most of them. They're just trying to provide for their families and raise their kids in a deteriorating culture and just get through. And it's no fun to face this stuff. I personally, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I can't take any more. But I do because of my situation. But it is uncomfortable. It is very discouraging and kind of depressing to think of our country being hijacked. But at the same time, if we don't, it's going to happen. And I feel like we're at a tipping point in history right now.
Yes, we are.
Where we're going to go one way or the other. It's kind of like a crossroads. Are we going to take the road to more innovation and freedom, or are we going to go the way of government control and oppression? And maybe we'll feel safer, although we really won't be. And maybe things will be more convenient, less private, more convenient. But we're really at a crossroads here.
Well,
I hope it's not too late. That's all.
Getting to the root of the real issue, back in January of 1988, on the front page of The Economist, it had a picture of the eagle coming out of ashes. With what looks like gold coins on it, and it said, now The Economist is owned by the Rothschild family, but it said 30 years from now, which is right now, 30 years from now, everything will be digital. So how did they know 30 years from now what was coming in advance if this has not been a well orchestrated plan? But right now, our country is in a real interesting situation that the globalists want to kill America because America is the last hope. America is the last light. If they can get America, it's over for the entire globe, for the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So there has to be a change, and either we fight this thing correctly through accountability and holding our public servants accountable and remembering that they serve us, not the other way around. All of these laws are written for them, for persons, not for the people, but they're written for them. And so the people need to take their stand, and they need to get active. And in 2018, we're coming up for midterms. We need to get active and say, listen, there are abuses that happen in the courtrooms every day. And for a defense attorney, or for any attorney, to say, well, yeah, they do that. Well, wait a minute. Just because they do that doesn't mean it's right. And we need to correct this today. And so those people in Washington that live in their own bubble need to be sent home by the people if they're not going to act right. And that includes the judges. If the judges sit on the bench in bad behavior, they need a pink slip. Go get a real job someplace. So
that exactly.
Anyway, let's kind of run through some of the things that happened. Let's say the first year or so that this transpired. What was the trigger in all of this where Ross may have said, hey, Mom, something strange happened yesterday? You remember?
You mean as far as being arrested?
Well, not really being arrested, because from strange as far as there apparently 2 FBI agents that, according to the story, and we kind of want to confirm this, but according to the story, they stole Bitcoins and later on got charged for that.
Well, we didn't learn about that until after trial, because the judge, first of all, they were not FBI. One was a DEA agent. They were at the core of the investigation out of Maryland DHS. One was DEA, one was NSA, and Secret Service. That's Sean Bridges. The other one, yes, he was working for the NSA at the time. This did not even come out until his sentencing, way after trial. The defense and Ross knew about that. One of them, Carl Force, they never weren't even told about Bridges' existence until after trial. Force and fought pre-trial to be able to have the jury know about this. I mean, this is rampant corruption.
Right.
Not only stealing, but they had unfettered access to the site, to the evidence, could change anything. They had passwords. They could change chats. All this evidence that the jury's looking at, they had the ability to change.
So did they steal?
It's corrupted.
Right.
Well, they had a back door to Silk Road because they arrested a man named Curtis Green, who was a top admin on Silk Road, and through him they got the back door. Now, Curtis Green has recently tweeted, and so then they claim that Ross arranged a murder for hire against Curtis Green, and they faked it and all of this stuff, and they have it in an indictment in Maryland based on the word of this corrupt agent who's now in prison. Curtis Green himself, the alleged victim, the person who supposedly Ross is organizing a hit, which is totally antithetical to his personality, but in any case, and his history, Curtis came out in a tweet and said, I don't think Ross has it in him to do this. I don't think he deserved this sentence. I don't think he's dangerous. Right. And this is the victim. I mean, even he sees the absurdity. The government never charged it at trial. They have it in this indictment that's been sitting there for 4 years. And of course, you can indict anybody for anything. It doesn't require proof of anything. And, but anyway, these corrupt agents, that all came out after trial. The judge allowed it to be precluded from trial. The jury never knew a thing about them. And we all had to act like, well, I didn't know about it. But they had to avoid the issue of the fact that there's these corrupt agents who were all over the site. And I personally believe, and a lot of people do, there's more. I mean, I think there were 2 corrupt agents, but I believe there's at least a third, maybe more, who've never been caught. Another thing about these agents is that there's numerous emails that were encrypted that the government's never required to have them decrypted. There's still sealed evidence about them. There's still redacted, all kinds of redacted information about them. I'm like, why? They're in prison. Ross is in prison. Let's see the whole story here. No.
So it would have to be, just as a theory, it would have to be, obviously, that they want to cover something up. Do you think potentially that
seems to me
people in the government did things that they don't want other people to know, and so that's why they've went after this? I mean,
I personally do, yes, and I think Edward Snowden came out and said that he believes the NSA was involved in Ross's case.
Sure,
it's a video right on our website where he said that. I mean, it's parallel construction to me is all over that thing. Sure. And all these stories that they have about it, and the media writes about it as if it's true. I'm like, really? You really think that's true? So, some of them are pretty lame, actually.
Who was the victim in this particular case, other than Ross? Who was the victim?
There were no victims. No victims came forward at trial to say that Ross had hurt them, nothing. Now, at sentencing, the prosecution brought in 2 parents who said that their children, they were Ross's age, one of them was younger, that they took drugs from Silk Road and died as a result. One was a heroin addict, and one took something at a party. But we hired a forensic pathologist to say, is this true? Can you prove this? I mean, and he said, no, you absolutely can't. And even that they died of drugs at all. But in any case, it's like saying, first of all, that Ross was running the site at the time. The government had the server at the time. But in any case, it's like, is Jeff Bezos responsible for the cyanide that a girl bought on Amazon and killed herself with, and her mother's suing Amazon? Back in 2013, is Jeff Bezos responsible? And this brings up a whole, and I'm not defending Silk Road, and I'm certainly not defending drug use, and I think it's a terrible tragedy, and I really feel for any parent who's lost a child to alcohol, to drugs, or any way, so don't get me wrong. And I really, I'm not here to defend Silk Road or dark websites or anything, but I am here to defend fair trials, and it brought an element of emotionalism into the sentencing that was very manipulative and really didn't belong in a courtroom. But in any case, I mean, you can't even say they were victims because it was never brought to trial. It was never proven. It was never even mentioned at trial.
Right.
At trial, not one victim
that,
came forward.
For every crime, part of the corpus delicti is that there is a verified claim made by a victim?
No, well, there you go.
I have case law on that, a number of cases. So
There has to be,
Who's
you
the
have to
victim?
be able to verify. Yeah, you have to have a victim that had a loss or was harmed or was injured. If you haven't got that, oh, and the loss, harm, or injury must be the result of the criminality of another. And they have to be able to show those things in every crime, whether it's a battery, whether it's theft, whether it's...
Would they have to prove those, or could they just allege those?
No, they have to prove them. There has to be a verified
They didn't
claim.
even allege them. They didn't even allege them.
Right.
Well, and here's the thing that bothers me. I haven't read all the transcripts yet because I've been reading, but I can't get through them. But
if you have insomnia, it'll put you to sleep. So that the government droned on and on for days. I mean, my God, they're just the most boring people ever. But anyway, I mean, they really are. They're just. I think that's part of their strategy, is to put the jury to sleep because they're literally were sleeping. But anyway, some of them.
let me ask this: the attorneys who represented Ross at trial, are they the same attorneys that crafted his appeal to?
Yes, they're the same as the appeal. They're not the same as the petition to the Supreme Court. So
right now, they just sent in a petition to the Supreme Court. They've not been accepted.
No, I mean, it's still in process, really. I mean, they're friends of the court briefs, amicus briefs have till, 30 days after it's docketed to submit those. I mean, it's a whole process. So no, it wouldn't be, it would be premature to accept it now.
Okay.
Are you aware that there are two different court systems? That there is a United States District Court, which is where he was tried.
Right.
United States District Court is formed by Article 4 of the Constitution, and a District Court of the United States is an Article 3 court, a court that was ordained and brought about by Article 3 of the Constitution. That's where Ross needed to be. The problem is there are none in the 50 states with the exception of Hawaii, and I can prove that to you. But
well, here's the thing, Justin. That's kind of important at this point in time. Being able to go through, and as we've looked at the transcripts, there were a lot of cases where this is a real good time for the defense attorney to stand up and say objection. But
yes.
Those things never happen, and
I know
he should have.
I agree.
So,
I agree. I agree.
That assumes facts that's not in evidence, not previously agreed to, and requires a legal opinion, by the fact witness or whoever is there on the stand.
To be fair, I agree. I agree with you. And to be fair, the judge shut him down repeatedly.
That's okay.
But there are parts. So anyway, it was a tough trial. I don't know if anyone could have won it, but there were parts of it where I'm like, "Whoa, stand up and say something." But
Ross was not against the prosecution. He was against the prosecution, the judge, and his own lawyer, because they're all part of the same cabal, unfortunately. And people don't realize that until they get into the ring of something like that, where they're asking their attorney, wait a minute, shouldn't you be objecting here? No, that's fine. We'll go and have drinks later. The three of us, you'll be going someplace else. That's usually how that comes down, until people understand what's really happened.
Well, I will say that as someone who I'd never dealt with anything close to this before, my husband hadn't. We were just kind of, I've learned a lot, but it's kind of like you are kind of figuring it out on the fly, and you don't realize, plus, so yeah, it's an overwhelming situation, and we're not giving up. I'm not going to leave Ross to die in prison. There's no way, as long as I have breath in my body. And we have an excellent team right now. I think top flight law firm, Williams and Connolly. The head of their Supreme Court practice, Canon Shamagam, he's like He just won an award. He's excellent. Everyone says so, and he's won in front of the Supreme Court many times. So I feel like Ross is in good hands. I feel right now, and yeah, we're working through the system. The system has him, and I feel like, we have to do this.
Well, right, and a lot of people have that same feeling that are in your position, that they need to be able to talk to somebody that knows, that is the professional of how this thing transpires. The problem in that scenario is that, yes, he's in the system, and the people that you hope to guard him are also in the system. And it's important that the people of the United States, and I use that term very loosely, but the people of our country that are here, there's no difference between Ross and anybody that's out there now could have stuff planted on their computer, drug through a courtroom, where you have the judge that's against you and the jury that's against you because they maintain it.
The whole system.
Get in there. The indictment, there was nobody that said, wait a minute, he's not a Martian. Really, he didn't come from Mars. He doesn't have green antennas. There's nobody in there that can say that, and they can say pretty much whatever they want to in that particular room. Now,
yeah, and just to interject, there's a book, 3 Felonies a Day. They have so many laws on the books now that actually no one can say how many. That's how many. The Constitution had 3 crimes. And so now there's a book, 3 Felonies a Day, that we're all committing, unknowingly or knowingly, 3 felonies a day.
right.
So, the reality is that if the government wants you, they will have you. That's not a good position for free people to be in.
Well,
That's not a good position at all. In fact, are we free?
well, that's a very important point. I really believe that the American people are there's a veil that's been pulled back. That the American people
I agree.
in 2017, 2016, maybe moving forward, have been able to look into, and it could be all the way back from 2012, but the American people have been able to look into this darkness and see this corruption. And now the question before the American people is, what are you going to do about it? And if the answer is a resolving, we're not going to do anything about it because I'm so busy on my Facebook and I'm so distracted over doing these meaningless things, those societies don't stay around very long. And rightfully so. They're not productive. So I'm hoping that this change that we have in Washington and the swamp that's there, one guy cannot drain the swamp. And we should not put it up to one guy to do that, because what that eventually moves into is a dictatorship years later if it goes unrestrained, or if people don't get involved and to help on that. Throughout the trial, how long did the trial actually last? Do you remember?
It was very fast. It was 3 weeks for a trial of this magnitude, and the jury came to their verdict of guilty on all counts in 3 hours, and that included lunch and a break. I mean, it was like but we were so shut down that I was kind of shocked that it was so fast, and so were other people loyal to me, and they said the jury took that long. That just shows there's definitely something wrong here. And but yeah, it was fast. Really horrible experience. Actually, after the sentencing, I went into the hospital and I literally almost died from a stress caused heart condition called broken heart syndrome. That and I didn't. By the grace of God, I didn't. It was very close, but and I'm fine. But it's incredibly painful and stressful to go through that. And poor Ross had to sit there. He wanted to testify, and lawyers always say, don't testify, don't testify. and he had to sit there and listen to that, everybody saying these things about him, and he wanted to talk, answer, and he couldn't. But yeah, it's been a nightmare. I just hope and pray that it can ultimately be something that can be used for good, that it can shine a light, because I have gotten to know many people and families in the prison now, in the system, who are trapped, and many of them with excessive sentences that are unnecessary. And I see the suffering of the children of these people.
Sure.
And of course, statistically, they will feed the system. And it's really a national disgrace that we have more incarcerated citizens than any country on earth.
Right.
And this is the land of the free. And obviously, if you're a danger to society and you're violent and you're, society, I think needs to be protected. Although I think if someone's put into a life sentence like Ross when he's so young, do you honestly think he's not going to mature and change? But even a violent person might. But Ross isn't even violent. His designation score is 12. That includes his charges, which add a bunch of points. That puts him 1 point above a camp which has no fences. It's so low. And in fact, when he went into the prison, they were like, "What are you doing in here?" And they go, "Oh, it's the sentence. This life sentence, this draconian, over-the-top sentence from this judge is what has him in a prison, a maximum security prison with violent gangs, violent people." It's frankly, I feel like he's in danger, and he's handling it, but it's wrong. Yeah. Oh, well, it's a criminal. They call it a correctional institute. It's a criminal manufacturing institute.
Right.
You almost have to become, aware of all of that, and you learn. All kinds of things, because to survive.
Right.
It's not correctional. It's the biggest joke. But they, everything's whitewashed. And but what's really going on is they're and I don't think, Ross even said to me, he goes, "Look, I haven't met one truly evil person in here, but there are violent people, and there's volatile people, and there's people who, you can be collateral damage in a race war.
Sure.
You can be, and Ross is, in a riot."
Yep.
And that's the kind of place he's been put. This is a person who's never harmed anyone, has no violence in his history at all, who's basically a very wonderful person. There's 100 letters on our website by people who know him saying to the judge, "Please give him the least amount of sentence," which is still 20 years. He couldn't, that was the mandatory minimum. That's a generation. That's a long time for a young person like him. And she went to the maximum. But then again, Chuck Schumer was behind the case, and she was recommended by Chuck Schumer, and Preet Bharara, who was his special counsel for many, many years, was the lead prosecutor. This was a political case.
Absolutely.
I mean, the biggest drug dealer on Silk Road only got 10 years. And he
heard-
actually sold drugs. They didn't say Ross ever sold any drugs. They said he was a website operator. And, again, Jeff Bezos is being sued by a mother whose daughter bought cyanide on Amazon. I don't hold him responsible for that.
Right.
But it's the same principle. Craigslist. How many people have died, been murdered because of ads? And it's like, if this were a civil case, Ross would not be held liable at all for what was on a website. That's the law. But because it's he's the first person who's being held criminally liable for what's on a website. And it's starting another precedent here. Who's responsible?
Let me bring up something that's kind of important for the viewers to understand, because when we use the word that you had used earlier, dark web, the dark web, from my understanding, now I'm not a programmer either, but from my understanding, the dark web is not the idiot Google where you just type in what you want to search, because Google is a platform that is over the dark web. So Google is an application that sits on top of the internet. So if you know coding, then you don't need Google. Now, there's been a lot of people that have said Google is so entrenched with our government. They are like this, and they don't want, they being Washington, D.C., NSA, all these different agencies, they don't want anybody to go outside the application, because inside the application, they've built a model to track everybody. And so what Ross did, not illegal. Programmers do it every single day. And that's where I think we really need to begin to expose what the real facts are behind this. What did he actually do, and who is the victim? If there's no victim, there's no crime.
Yeah, well, like I said, no victims were named, but let me just, you've put your finger on why I think they went after him so hard and why they're making him their trophy. And they're just fine. The guy who took over Silk Road 2 and it was actually bigger and sold more drugs, he's free, by the way. He's free. He's free. So apparently they don't think he's that dangerous that he needs to be put away. But let me just say, I think it was either Bitcoin. I think it was both. I think it was Bitcoin. It was very threatening. Chuck Schumer was a senior member of the Senate Finance Committee. He was also on the Banking Committee. And I think that, that was very disturbing to the financial powers, that there was this alternate currency. I think it still is disturbing.
Sure, it is.
Alternate powers that, ultimate currency, that was beyond their control.
No, you had it right.
The other thing is Tor, and you nailed, it's true. It's a monetary revolution, really. And you nailed it when you said about the privacy, because you had to, first of all, you had to know how to open a Bitcoin account, right. And you had to know how to use Tor, the onion router, which is an anonymous, you could operate anonymously on Tor, which is an alternate, I guess, browser. And that's what makes it the dark net as opposed to Google. But the government even said in their papers about Ross's case that anyone who uses Tor has criminal intent. Now, dissidents use Tor, anyone who wants privacy, journalists use Tor. So for them, that's how they see it, though. Well, you're trying to keep something from us, so you must be a criminal. Well, and so I think between Tor and Bitcoin, that's why they went after Ross. I don't think they care about drugs. They've proved it with the other sentences involved.
Well, anybody that doesn't follow their narrative must be a criminal. And that's how they've kind of painted it.
Well, in their view, they are a criminal.
Have you ever heard of Ricky Ross?
I have heard of him, yes.
Okay, well, Ricky has an amazing testimony that he was the drug dealer that the government put out there to deal all the drugs that came in. So, our government, we have interviewed a gentleman by the name of Cody Snodgres that was a CIA operative. Well, Cody has talked about where the government came to him and said, we want for you to be involved in blowing up the Oklahoma City building. Offered him cash. Here you go.
Whoa.
He has now come out and given his testimony, so to speak, on the air. He's written a book, 600 and something page book, that he just tells everything. Do you know the reason why they blew up Oklahoma City?
No.
That's where all of Clinton's files were shipped over to. When they blew that building up, they went in after that and demolished the building. They actually had 3 different entities to blow that building up. Only one of them worked. The other 2 entities did not work. They wanted to blow that building all over Oklahoma City. And it was only for that one reason. Well, now all of a sudden, there's a guy that's a first-hand witness. And he's been a... Justin, do you remember... was he a CIA operative for 30 years or 40 years?
It was over 20 years. I don't remember the exact length of time, but it was over 20 years.
Right. Well, he tells stories and gives account of how the government has been behind all of this stuff. And it's time that the people wake up and realize that these people in Washington and that these court systems are completely out of control. These agencies at DOJ that we're starting to see now, but they're completely out of control, run by somebody that is doing their own thing. It's not for the people at all. It's not helping the people.
No.
When you have an issue with somebody, let's say telecommunication, you're being harassed by a telemarketer of some type. So you contact the agency. When you contact the agency, you file a complaint. Do you ever get any money out of that, or do you get any no? That agency gets the money. The agency goes after the people, prosecutes the people, and gets all their money, whatever that would be. And so there's a lot that needs to change in our judicial system, and it may start with the executive branch and the legislative branch to get all the attorneys out of there, because they're never supposed to be there. And we really need to begin to push that particular narrative.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Please sign up for the notes and for future show information on our website, josephfarleyshow.com. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and help share the links. We're in a fight for the very heart of America. We're being blocked by the globalists, the social media ghettos, and the fake news media, because here is where truth is revealed.